Good afternoon and good morning to those of you that have joined us from overseas. As always, if you've joined our webinars previously, we're just going to wait a minute or so just to let everyone settle in. As always, it's always really hard for me to keep quiet for a minute. So just enjoying the weather actually in the UK, because I think all the other webinars I've run over the last 6 months have been miserable and I seem to be obsessed with the weather.
Yeah, it's nice out here today as well. I think we've actually got it for the next week or so, so I'm really looking forward to getting out of the weekend and taking the most of it.
Well, this is our summer, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, make the most of it before it disappears, because it's very likely to.
That's it. Okay, so we'll just leave it a few more seconds. So thank you, everyone, as I said, for joining us today. I'm joined with Ian today, and the webinar is Never Have I Ever Navigating the Last Mile of Compliance. And I'm lucky to say, and I'm happy to say, that Papaya Global have sponsored today's webinar. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Melanie Fitzy, and I'm the CEO of the Global Payroll Association. So I'm delighted to say I have Ian Giles here today with me. Ian is the Global Payroll Strategist for Papaya Global. Papaya provides payroll, payments, workforce management to all employment types in over 160 countries. Through a series of never have I ever scenarios, can you tell I'm going to struggle with that?
Yeah.
Ian will share lessons learned from mishaps and triumphs of global payroll and payments, from fragmented processes to compliance considerations. So as we delve into the experiences that shape the world of global payroll and payments, gain valuable insights, practical strategies, and real-world practices that will help you overcome its challenges. So just to let you know, the webinar is being recorded, the slides will be available, and please let us know if you do have any questions, and we'll answer those at the end of the webinar. So Ian, over to you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Mel, and hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today. I have to say before we start, never have I ever thought I'd be turning a drinking game into webinar. This is an absolute first for me. As Mel said, my name is Ian Giles, and I've worked in payroll for the last 25 years. I've had roles in all kinds of industries, ranging from retail and beauty to aerospace, in all types of businesses, from startup to matrix across the globe, providing leadership and strategy to populations of more than 100,000 employees in 170 countries. At Papaya, I work across the business, managing and building external relationships, supporting enterprise clients and solutions, and acting as an advisor. And the best bit is I get to talk a lot about payroll and payments. I'm also a mentor for the GPA, which is an opportunity for me to pay forward what I've learned in that 25 years within the profession. It's something I really wish I'd had when I was around in my early days.
Yeah, and I have to say you are a popular mentor, Ian. So, right, so we're going to launch our first poll. So you see the slide in front of you. Never have I ever done any of the payroll tasks Ian has listed in this slide. So you will know that I have this magic number of people that I'd like to answer this question. So you have yes or no. So performs 500,000 keyboard strokes, use a dot matrix printer. Oh my God, that shows our age, Ian. Separated meters of perforated pay slips, paid employees in cash, hand-to-hand write checks. And I have to be honest with you, I think I miss getting my wages in cash. I used to love it, a little envelope.
It's nothing like the feel of cash, isn't it?
No, but it's all changing now, isn't it?
It is.
We just have to remember the old days. So what do you reckon is going to be the highest, Ian? Yes or no?
Oh, I think it's a difficult one to tell. I mean, there are so many people within the industry. We've got people, the old stalwarts. We've got people coming into the industry. I'm going to go with the fact that most people will not have done any of those things.
Okay. Right, so I'm just going to give it just a few more seconds. So if you haven't answered, it's really easy, yes or no, and I have my magic number and it's nearly there. Thank you, whoever just did that for me. Right, I'm going to close it.
Wow, we've got an abacus in the webinar chat.
Oh my God, that's yeah, that's amazing.
Wow.
Okay, so we've got yes, 56%, no, 44%. So interesting results. I think I feel slightly old, but there you go. Ian, so how did you get into the payroll industry?
I think just like everybody else, I fell into it. There isn't a careers fair, and there definitely isn't a payroll stand at that imaginary careers fair. Before payroll, I worked in the cinema industry. I organized new cinema openings. I manage red carpet events. One of my claims to fame is that I got to meet the entire cast of Armageddon, Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck, Liv Tyler, Michael Clarke Duncan, and many more. And one of the other highlights of that career was that I got to look after Richard Attenborough for the day. For those of you that don't know him, he's obviously been in Jurassic Park and many, many other films. After all that glamour, I moved into recruitment, where I placed up to 1,000 temporary workers a day into clients. I was asked to become the payroll manager. So you could say that I was actually invited into the inner sanctum of payroll. The rest is history. I think it would be very, very interesting to kind of like see in the chat window how many people, fellow payrolls, got into payroll too.
Yeah, well, so let us know, what was you doing before you got into payroll? Because I think that there's a lot of people with interesting backgrounds, but maybe not as interesting as yours, Ian. Union billing. Okay. Oh, we haven't fallen into it. You chose it, maybe. So Ian, what was payroll like, shall I say, in the dark ages?
Yes, you could say in the dark ages. Yeah. So quite honestly, it's not something that I'd ever do again. My first payroll was a weekly one. It had individual handwritten timesheets produced over multiple locations. They all had to be collated. They then had to be entered into a spreadsheet. They then had to be entered into the payroll system. And that resulted in 500,000 keyboard strokes a week. It was crazy at that point in time. Monday to Wednesday was spent producing the payroll. Thursday to Friday was spent on producing the reporting. Printing was a thing. Like I say, we had the dot matrix printers, and they were the size of a small sofa. They weren't the little things that you see today. You move forward a few years, and I thought I'd won the lottery when we moved into normal size printers, A4 pay slips, and an envelope stuffer. I look back now with the introduction of employee self-service. I think maybe I wasn't quite so lucky. Things have gotten better over time, but I still do think that we've got a long way to go.
So just looking at some of these answers, I think, sorry to say, I don't know if there's anything as glamorous of what you're, as your previous industry before you got into payroll, but there's some good ones on chat. So thanks for everyone that's answering. So
I like the PGA Golf Tour one.
Okay, PGA Golf, yeah, okay, that's a good one. Yeah, sorry, that might compete with yours, Ian. Everything payroll leads to payments, whether it's the employee, a benefits, or pension provider, a partner, or local government. How we get there can differ vastly, but the end result should be the same: happy, engaged employees and a profitable business. So this does all sound easy, doesn't it, really? But as we all know, in reality, it can be the complete opposite, even if you only get a small part of it wrong. So today's webinar is an opportunity to hear from someone, Ian, who's been in your shoes, got the t-shirt, has also got the grey hair. So he did say that I could say that. I feel bad. Obviously, I've got grey hair, but I dye mine. So today we'll discuss why is global payroll so complex, bringing payroll and payments into the 21st century, the challenges in global payroll payments, pay tech built for payroll, Papaya Global solution. Not all payrolls are created equal, understanding payroll maturity, legislation, compliance, and local payroll practices. So we've got a lot there to discuss. So payroll can be difficult, even in one country, but when you're doing it global, it's a whole new ball game. What's your view, Ian? And why is payroll so complex?
Great question, Mel. And I'm slightly distracted by everybody's stories still coming through. It's absolutely fantastic. It's probably one of the biggest points of the entire session. But no, really great question. I've spent most of my working life in payroll, and I can say that never have I ever seen anything advanced as little as payroll and payments in business compared to any of the other functions in all that time. It shocks me how little both have advanced. Global payroll is complex for a variety of reasons. Regulations, compliance, data security, transparency, and banking rules, just for starters. And I believe it's caused by three things. We're holding on to the past and using outdated infrastructures. We're simply not investing in payroll enough. And sadly, there is little to no understanding of just how complicated payroll and payments can be. In an era of tech, payroll has been slow to get on board with automation. And can you believe that nearly as much of 25% of payroll is still done by hand with pen and paper? Now, payroll isn't one of those things that's easy to fix when it's broken. It's often too late. And when you try to, it takes a huge amount of effort. And I'm sure everybody making these comments in the chat feels that pain and has been there as well. You just need to read what's happening almost daily to know this. It's time to change that. It's time to invest in what is the biggest cost in businesses. And that's especially true when it comes to payroll. So looking at this slide here, the global labour workforce is currently 3.5 billion people. I say only, but it was only 2.3 billion in the early 1990s. That's an extra 1.2 billion workers in 30 years. Nearly half of large global businesses state they don't have the level of standardization in their processes that they either need or want. And as a result, 8 in 10 errors are due to time reporting, poor HCM data, data entry mistakes, poorly communicated hires and terminations, absence management, and system configuration. And to top it all off, if you get any part of that wrong or a large part of that wrong, when data is shipped to the wrong place, the average cost of a global data breach is $3.9 billion.
Yeah, and so that's a really interesting topic, isn't it? And it's a hot topic right now. We ran a symposium in Edinburgh last week, and we're talking about this. And one of the things that I think has surprised a few payroll leaders with a recent case of a data breach, the provider isn't being sued by the employees, it's the employer that is being sued by the employee. So that's a really big situation at the moment. And I think there's a lot about prevention and, you know, the whole story basically. But actually, I think the payroll leaders need to be aware that the employee can actually be the company that gets sued and not the provider. Absolutely, something to be very, very mindful of. The numbers below, the ones that I've just kind of like gone through aren't mine. They are the output of a recent survey, which showed that the top 3 global payroll pain points are compliance, inefficiencies, and working across multiple jurisdictions. I think this is all a lot to think about and manage daily, bearing in mind there is technology out there to help solve these problems. Papaya, for example, has just introduced a new HCM cloud connector. It enables businesses to quickly onboard HR data. It's able to integrate any type of information, whether it's coming from your HCM, your HRIS, or even an Excel spreadsheet. The connector is able to reduce manual work by up to 90%. Paying 3.5 billion people adds another layer of complexity, and this is another little bit of maths here, and I am quite a geek when it comes to that kind of thing. But the figures blew my mind. Mel and I spoke about them a little while ago, and it's staggering. So there are 213 million businesses in the world at this moment in time. And for a moment, let's say every employee worked in a single country for every one of those businesses. The payroll cycle was monthly, and they only had one tax, social security payment, as well as 2 third-party payments to benefits and pension providers. That comes up as 50 billion payments a year. You make those countries 20, the number becomes 195 billion. You add 50, and that becomes 425 billion payments. In reality, and I think where everybody's coming from today, you know, country-wise, you know, we know that there are multiple pay frequencies, entities, pension as well as benefit providers. That number has to be in the trillions. We work in a multi-trillion payment environment without even thinking about it. Yeah, there was actually, before you came onto this slide, somebody had already put payroll touch lives of billions directly. So they're on the same page as you. So in the last couple of years, we've seen a huge boom in fintech growth, haven't we? More than we've ever seen in the last 30 years combined. So what do you think the biggest takeaways are from this period, especially concerning payroll?
So I think the biggest takeaways in these years have shown us the art of the possible, but also how far we've still got to go. Never have I ever seen as much change as I have in those recent years. Many companies have had to think quickly in order to provide services and solutions to employees. This has brought an unprecedented energy of innovation, creativity, like nothing that we've ever seen before, which is fantastic. Paytech itself has received a dramatic makeover. From the rise of QR codes to pay in restaurants, can't believe the first time I ever did that. I kind of scanned my phone on the table and that's it, the money was gone. And then you kind of like look at the increased resilience on mobile payments in everyday processes. I only carry my bank cards around now as a backup these days. And I think a lot of us are kind of like getting to the same place. And yet, despite this Paytech evolution, payroll and payments seem to have been left behind. With the associated turbulence in the job market, payroll teams have had to ensure that final salaries, PTO balances and more are delivered and recorded properly. So essentially, you've got two things happening here. One, there is an increased pressure on payroll teams to deliver like never before. And two, none of the technology needed to solve that has increased, has been there to look at that increased workload. Papaya is working hard solving these problems. We've built what we call a payroll operating system, a payroll OS, if you will, which is essentially a global payroll and payment system that's both regulated and licensed. It can operate in multiple countries and can pay employees in multiple currencies. Its payment rails are instant and, importantly, designed for payroll. These types of solutions can drastically cut down payroll teams' workloads and pressure to deliver timely and error-free payments to employees. While some business has been turning to software solutions, others are still struggling to get themselves into a good place, often due to a fear of change, distrust of technology, or both.
So the big question is really, what's payroll going to look like in the 21st century? What's the future?
Another fantastic question. If we don't do something about it, it's going to remain siloed. It's going to remain after the fact and the same that it has been for a long, long period of time, rather than transparent and in the moment, which is ideal. Never have I ever thought about the fact that payroll operates smoothly as it could when it relies on these unnecessary systems and partners. It's just not possible. It's not efficient. To give you an idea of how far there still is to go, according to Deloitte, only 11% of companies say they have workforce data in real time. 11%. It's shocking. The more and more a business spends on global payroll, the less they see is it's likely to be siloed over these numerous systems, spreadsheets, and locations. It creates time-consuming manual processes. If a business operates in 10 countries, they are probably going to have 10 local payroll partners to ensure compliance in each of those countries. The lack of visibility also extends to payroll payments. Not being able to accurately track these payments can lead to compliance mishaps in the last mile transactions. In the traditional model, there are an overwhelming number of disparate systems. The number of integrations can be non-existent, or be in large amounts and very basic. There's no real consistency or framework. The use of unsecured methods for sharing sensitive data and information, meanwhile, increases the chances of a data breach, as well as non-compliance with security regulations such as GDPR. There is a huge amount of effort for all of those involved. That goes without saying. I think everybody listening to us today can completely understand that that's the case, and they've seen it, they live it, and they breathe it. If you look at this slide, there is a lot going on between ATS, the hiring side of things, and payment. You've got HRIS, HCM, ERP, journal entries, payroll summaries, authorities, banks, third parties, and KYC, but they're not always connected. In my opinion, the answer must be Paytech built for payroll. Surely, I think we deserve the tools designed to do the job. And I think we do, absolutely. I'm sure everybody in the audience thinks the same way. We shouldn't be using tools that haven't been developed for payroll. We've always done it this way, just isn't a reason anymore to avoid evolution.
Yeah, so that's this slide feels like a good time to do our next poll. So get ready, everyone. Zoom love changing how we do the polls. It's always keeping me on my toes. Okay, so has that launched?
It hasn't yet.
Okay, right, let me go back. Apologies. Oh no, it's not letting me launch. Oh, should we just ask them to put them in the chat?
I think in the chat, yeah.
Oh, it says a poll has been launched in this meeting, but it's not working. I apologise. I don't know what's happening here. So how many tools does your business use across these three functions? So we have 1 to 4, 5 to 9, and 10 plus. Thank you, everyone, for helping me out on this one. Oh, let me just see if this works. Right, I've just found out what I've done.
Oh, there's the poll.
There you go. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm obviously not the techie person. Oh gosh. Thank you.
I think whilst that's going on, it would also be very, very interesting to kind of like see where people have got 1 to 4, how many countries that's across.
Yeah, if you've done 1 to 4, that would be really interesting to find out.
It would, because that kind of tells me that the number of jurisdictions is lower than some businesses that are using 5 to 9, and the poor unfortunate person that is using 10.
85 countries there.
Wow,
that's a big payroll. Nice payroll.
That's good. That's meaty, that is.
Yeah, that will. I'm sure that some things keep you awake there.
90. It feels like an auction.
We buy that, didn't we? Are we just showing that we're proper payroll geeks? We are. Anyway, we've got to stop looking at the chat. We haven't got my magic number. If you haven't added this, could you just quickly add this? That'd be wonderful. Thank you. If there's the last couple of people that can just do it for me. Okay. Right, let's make sure I get this right next time. Right, okay. So we have 1 to 4, 48%, 5 to 9, 33%, 10 plus 20. There's a lot of countries there.
There's a lot of countries, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of payrolls. That looks absolutely fantastic. Yeah, there's many a conversation and story to be had in there, I can tell, without a shadow of a doubt.
Keep letting us know. We'll try not to get distracted by it, but please feel free to keep letting us know how many countries.
It's really brilliant seeing it, and I think not just from our point of view, the rest of the audience can actually see what everybody else is getting up to as well, which is really, really great. So a permanent connection between systems reduces the administrative workload and increases operational efficiency. I think we can all kind of see that is the case. But it does more than that. It has the potential to significantly decrease the risk of non-compliance and data breaches, as I've said. To have an efficient global workforce management strategy, you need to have standardized payroll processes and outcomes.
So before we get into more challenges, you mentioned one of the problems is that there's little to no understanding or just, knowing how complicated payroll payments can get. So why is that? What's the reason? Okay,
so never had I ever, rather than have I ever. So never had I ever before considered that, that this was a problem. I didn't need to, like the majority of other people. We just kind of got on with the bit that we were doing and not really worried about anything else. But when you get on a global level, it's completely different to working on one country. To the non-payroll or the non-finance professional out there, this is just another big red button. And I can say hand on heart that this is not, and I've spent almost as much time making and approving payments as I have on payroll data, or so it's felt from time to time. Payroll and payroll payments are connected. They're not two separate processes, but they are segregated or have been till now. We've been using all-purpose payment solutions rather than developing a solution that's fit for purpose. The payment rails that we've been using were not designed for payroll payments. It makes it extremely difficult to monitor the process, to determine where a payment has failed, particularly when you're making cross-border payments.
Okay, so we got time for our last poll. Let me make sure I get this correct. So apologies. Okay, never have I ever experienced issues paying an employee on time as a result of a bank or payment service provider. So yes or no?
Do we want to hazard a guess to where this number is?
Well, I can see where it's going.
I can see it hitting the 90s.
Okay.
I don't think there's a person in payroll that's ever not experienced a payroll payment problem.
Yeah, I used to run a really small payroll for a recruitment agency, and somebody decided not to pay them on the Friday. And obviously your background's recruitment as well, Ian, so you know.
It is, and my background in recruitment was actually on site, so they came looking for you. You know, it wasn't an email, it wasn't a telephone call. They were unhappy people, and you know that kind of like teaches you very, very quickly how important that is to people on all kinds of levels. We're all in this to make sure that people get paid properly.
Definitely, it's interesting, isn't it? Okay, so we're nearly there. If you haven't answered, if you could just answer, that'd be fabulous. Just a few more seconds before I end the poll. Okay, right, let's show the results here. Can you see? So yes, 41%, no, 59%. Has that surprised you a bit?
That surprised me. I thought that the numbers of payment issues would be a lot higher than they are. You know, maybe, yeah, yeah, I'm stunned by that. I actually thought it would be a lot more.
So somebody's put on challenges have been there. However, we've managed on time payouts through a proactive approach. So there have been problems.
That's right. Yeah.
Which you don't want to do you? You don't want to have to, you know, it's stressful, isn't it? You don't want added stress, even though you've managed to solve the problem.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the fact that is the case and people are making changes is what it's really all about. It's absolutely fantastic.
Okay, so can you give us some example? I know there are some examples actually in the chat, but can you give us some additional examples of why payments don't necessarily land on time and what problems the business can actually face?
Yeah, sure. There are two ways of doing cross-border payments currently, and we've identified the major pain points when it comes to sending funds spanning both of those solutions. So as you can see here, some of them are legacy problems from the banking side of things, problems we've been working with for a long period of time. And I'll cover some more detail, you know, in a second or so, but you can see here the kind of things that we're working with from a banking point of view. And here, some of the newer problems, more modern challenges when we're actually working with payment service providers. Payroll payments are highly sensitive and delays are a serious compliance issue. Data security also becomes an issue. There's a focus on the send date, not the land date. You know, ironically, there is a clear lack of visibility. Businesses have to have a constant eye on local governments, banking regulations, cross-border transactions need to be paid in local currencies, creating currency conversion problems. Time to fund puts stress on working capital. Payment rails are non-optimal. There are hidden fees and FX volatility. They create voids. And I can almost guarantee that 99 times out of 100, it's the worker's payment is the one that this comes out of rather than the business. Payroll classification and identification of the ultimate debtor, i.e. you or the business, don't always take place. And KYC, setting up and managing local business accounts, takes months. It's time consuming. And it's a task that, yeah, it takes a huge amount of time.
So just had a quick question of what does KYC mean, know your customer?
Yes, absolutely. It's know your customer, as you say. I mean, we can kind of like go into some more details or take that offline, but it's a process of making sure that all of the boxes are ticked and everything is in the right place before we actually start moving payments around.
So I'm not saying you're old, Ian, but we have been on a journey of work. And I'm sure you've seen a few payment challenges along the way yourself. Would you like to share what you've seen?
Totally. So I don't think you can have done the job without seeing payments go wrong. You know, I've been corrected here and some people, you know, seem to be, you know, in the right place. They've experienced little. Maybe that's because they've not been in the industry as long as I have. I've seen all kinds of things. I think it's a battle scar. So, you and that's the way it is. Never have I ever thought about payroll payments being anything other than super payments. They need to be treated as such. Going back to one of the previous slides, how we pay employees has changed very, very little over the last 30 years. And it's time to make it simpler for everybody, no matter what side of the table that you're on, whether you're the employee or the employer. I've used BACS, CHAPS, CPUB, SWIFT. I've used client bank accounts, payment providers, and I've even paid employees, as I said, in cash in my time. I've managed multiple bank accounts at the same time in a number of countries, and each one has its own demands. Each has its own way of dealing with issues and the non-arrival of payments. Banks are bureaucratic, and whilst chasing payments, sorry, that sounds like a Coldplay song, it's not meant to. Conversations are taking place, and the employee is still the person that hasn't been paid. You want to help, you want to give them a payment, but that then opens another can of worms. What happens when the original funds land in the employee's bank account and you've got to chase them for one of those payments? When you use a third-party payroll provider, you add another handoff and or more even into the mix. You need to move monies from bank accounts to providers. You may need to fund your account weeks in advance. They don't all mark them as payroll payments, and the ultimate debtor, as I've said, may not be the business. This causes issues or delays when looking for mortgages and things like that. Some of the partners, some third-party payment providers are also using their own third-party payroll providers, and that creates an even greater lack of visibility within the process and the chain. The introduction of working from anywhere has added more complexity. Each country has got its own series of regulations regarding payroll payments, and if you don't keep your finger on the pulse with these requirements, you risk losing significant amount of money to fees and penalties. I think, I've mentioned it a few times, but the point that I'm trying to make is last mile payments can be painful and complicated. It's just simply not enough to pay your employees today. They want the name of their employer on bank statements, and this isn't something that you always get. Businesses don't want to go through the never-ending KYC process or what can be months and months of waiting to open a local bank account. They don't want to have to sign documents in wet ink in person. It's evident when paying employees abroad, it can significantly put a strain on all parties. So this is the reason that Papaya is focusing so heavily on payroll payments. They are this unique breed of transaction. And again, they do need to be treated as such. We've been working constantly to build new products that answer these unique problems. Our Payroll OS comes with 5 money transfer licenses, offers payments in as little as time as the same day, and gives clients the ability to fund in 13 currencies and pay out in 160 countries. There's a little bit more detail on this slide, but we offer same-day payments in some locations, and it takes no more than 72 hours guaranteed anywhere else. This frees up your working capital. Payments are 100% accurate. The money an employee has earned is the money that they get. We use tier 1 banking security measures and are a licensed payment provider. Nothing is hidden. You get to see where the money is at every single stage of the process. We run vigorous AML screenings processes for every single payment we go through. The security is exactly what you would expect it to be, and we provide full liability if anything goes wrong.
So you give us an idea of like why global payroll and payments are so complex, but how do you know as a business if your payroll isn't as developed as others? So how do you judge that?
It's a great something to look at. I'm just looking at, I'm slightly distracted again. There's some great points and conversations come up in the chat. So if I don't get the ability to, or the timing to answer those questions during the webinar, I'd like to maybe get back to people and do that. But, in terms of your question, we need to have an efficient global workforce management strategy. You need to have standard payroll processes and outcomes. You cannot let the exceptions manage you. You need to be able to deliver real-time visibility into payroll operations, anticipate upcoming costs, help retain talent, build fairness, diversity, and and equity as well. There are two totally different ways of looking at payroll here. One of them is very, very old school, and the other is best in breed. If you're on the left-hand side of this slide, there's definitely still work to do. And if you're on the right-hand side of the slide in any way, you've probably been on the left-hand side at some point in time. And there are still improvements to make. I don't believe that, anything can be the finished article. There's always work to do. Even if you're on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, we often work in our own payroll bubble. We're processing away, but there are ways to look at how you can further improve what you're doing. Self-discovery and understanding how mature your payroll is a great way of doing that. Never have I thought about payroll strategy, like I say, as something that is finished. You always need to be looking for ways to improve what you do. And when I present payroll maturity to clients, you'd think it was being quite provocative, but it ends up being a light bulb moment for people. It's an opportunity to think about, this is where we are and how far we still have to go. To me, and a lot of other people, you will have seen the model before, there are 4 stages of payroll maturity, and you can apply this theory to HR, to finance, possibly even your kids if you want to. So the first stage is the immature stage, as you saw on the previous slide. The payrolls tend to be high touch, they're heavily manual. It could be a new business or a new country that you're venturing into. Your error rates are going to be high due to minimum data validation, lack of audit and governance. Payroll cycles can lack harmonization and will require review. As for payroll payments, you pretty much get the cards that you're dealt with. Then comes the reactive payroll. It's focused on maintaining but not improving payroll expertise, compliance, and admin. They've got a medium to low touch and a moderate level of manual effort. I think most payrolls sit here in this space. We're constantly firefighting. And again, payroll payments aren't necessarily the main focus here. Then you have a controlled payroll. It's focused on improving payroll execution from one cycle to the next, increasing the technical expertise and achieving excellence. The number of technologies is kept to a minimum. There's a lower touched approach that reduces error and effort. Payments get more attention naturally because the rest of the payroll is improving as well at the same time. And then you have the gold standard of payroll, the strategic payroll. It's got the ability to shape strategy by influencing other functions. It delivers the valued added activities you can't necessarily get to because you're in one of those other 3 phases. It's managed through centers of excellence. It focuses on the payment process. It works with partners, importantly, not vendors, and has an employee self-service model in place. Employee satisfaction and business trust will be very, very high with this payroll model. So by knowing what you've got to work on and how far you've still got to go, carrying out a current state assessment, there are things that you need to look at and things that you need to consider. Resource being one of them, and where that is located, the knowledge you have and need within your teams, the data itself, what cutoffs look like, handoffs. Is there far too much effort for the output? What does communication look like? And what is the payment process like at the end of your entire process? Don't forget about perception. What does the business think? What do your employees think as well? You might think you're doing a great job, but listen to stakeholders and act accordingly. It's very, very important to listen to what people have to say.
Yeah. So operating on a global level isn't for the faint-hearted. I think we all know that at the GPA and obviously at Papaya. The bigger a company grows, the more they need to understand and manage. So how can businesses make sure they are doing everything right all the time?
Yeah. So I've had a hand in payrolls in one way or another in a lot of countries over the last 25 years. Never have I ever thought that there is a one size fits all payroll, or that every business is the same as the next. It's not possible, but there are a large number of things every business must do to remain compliant. Understanding local laws, regulations, business practices helps mitigate risks associated with international expansion. Those that have payrolls in multiple countries know that the tax rates are levied on a progressive scale, and they range from nothing to 55%, depending on what that country is. Penalties for non-payments of tax can be as high as 240% of the amount due. In some countries, they impose personal liabilities to anyone attempting to evade tax, with prison sentences of up to 8 years. Then you look at social security taxes. They vary by country as well. They're as high as 33% for employers and 35% for employees. Submitting tax returns and remitting taxes are dependent on lots of different factors, such as the country and the headcount within a business. They can be weekly, semi-monthly, quarterly, annually, and in some cases not required at all. They're normally completed or paid no later than the 30th of the following month. Payments can be made electronically, which most of us will do. They can be made at approved banks, over the phone, or even at a post office. Don't even remember last time I went into a post office, used a stamp or anything like that. We've all got email these days. So Papaya navigates those potential risks, ensuring that business operations remain compliant and secure. Working with the right partner will go a long way to ensuring the success of a business. You know, as there's a whole heap of potential challenges when you pay a global workforce. That goes without saying, especially if you don't know your way around the block.
I'm ashamed to say that I don't even know how much a first class stamp is, but anyway, I thought
61 pence the last time I did it. Hasn't it gone to £1 or something now?
God. Okay, so there are different payroll models. Do they actually make a difference at all?
I think they do, and kind of like going back, you know, there isn't a one size fits all solution. So, you know, never have I ever done so much research into this kind of stuff, or kind of, you know, looked at it and how to process payrolls, or who should be doing what. Knowledge shifts depending on how your business operates. You need to determine what works for you, you know, and what works for your business, whether it's in the short term, the medium term, or the long term. You know, be prepared to think as you grow. An in-house payroll model will require country-specific payrollers, you know, in-house payrollers with expertise on a country or a regional basis. You might have total control of your payroll and the data within it, but you may need to have a large internal team, very, very mindful. The more you expand and kind of like diversify out into new territories, the more this will cost over time. A more decentralized payroll will have a smaller payroll team and use in-country partners with knowledge of each country they operate and provide services in. You do gain immediate cultural and, you know, and other terms of expertise in those countries. In, you know, and reducing compliance is obviously something that we'll take here, but there may be inconsistent reporting from one provider to the next. You know, what does that look like? What currency is it in? What language does it come in? A more centralized, uniform, or aggregated model, or whatever, you know, what term you want to use, via a single provider coordinating payroll and payment providers for a company, should provide a single language and the currency. This will reduce inconsistencies and change the, you know, and the change of error, cost and reporting information from around the globe. You know, it's accessible from a single point of access, which means you can get information and data more accurately and faster. You need to vet carefully, you know, because, you know, you need to make sure that you are working with the right people and their capabilities, and everything that they promise will be delivered as you're wanting it to be.
So what about the local payroll practices? Surely that adds another layer of complexity.
It absolutely does. I recently delivered training and included a slide on this. Never have I ever done as much research as I have done, like I said, in the last few weeks or so, into how things differ from country to country. It still amazes me how different everything is. You don't necessarily think about it until somebody asks you the question. Everybody wants to work in a particular country when they see the number of public holidays they get, but they change their tune the second they actually see the number of working hours that they might have to do instead in that country. We all know how different pay frequencies can be around the world, but does everybody know that the hours in Japan, for example, are pretty much double what they are in France? There's that saying, politics is always local. The same goes for payroll, which is why when you choose a payroll and payments provider, it's really, really important to choose the right one with the right local level of compliance and regulations concerning all of the countries that you operate in. Papaya Global solves this problem by giving their customers access to those local experts wherever they operate and wherever their payrolls are. Before we get into any questions we might have, I think there's a few things that I'd like to kind of like leave the audience with. I think we can kind of like all agree on this. The mission of payroll is to pay everyone on time, as we said, every single time. Even after you've gotten the data right, the legislation correct, compliance and local practices right, it can still feel clunky at the very, very back end. We've touched on this throughout, but there are a few things that businesses should be focusing on when paying employees, and those are the things that we're solving at Papaya. Everything leads to payments. We've said this throughout the webinar, but it's absolutely true. You need to stop focusing on when the send date is. Send dates don't account for delays. They don't necessarily capture public holidays and those kind of things. You need to focus on the land date. More is often worse. Too many cooks definitely spoil the broth, as they say, and too many handoffs will have an adverse effect on your payroll and payments. Bottlenecks and points of failure are prime examples of what will happen here. Paytech for payroll will win the day, but not just the day, the week, the fortnight, the month, or whatever your payroll cycle is. And remember that not all payrolls are created equal. Level up the playing field, assess and take stock, and then take a step back and look at what you can become, look at how you can become best of breed.
Okay, so before we go on to questions, I wanted to leave everyone with one final thought. This is too difficult for a mathematician. It takes a philosopher. The hardest thing in the world to understand is the income tax. And that's Albert Einstein, so that says a lot, really, doesn't it?
I think it really, really does. The jobs that the audience and every other payroller is performing at this moment in time, it's the foundations of a business. If we do not do what we do, people do not get paid. So I would like to say a big thank you to everybody that I know, everybody in payroll. I think you're doing an absolutely fantastic job.
They are. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions. If you do have any questions for Ian, please put in chat or the Q&A. How can technology help support global payroll operations?
Okay, so robotic process automation, RPA for short, is ideal for tasks that are repetitive and rule-based in high volume, particularly for payroll. It means that bots can work faster with more accuracy and scale to virtually any level. They can stay on task 24 hours a day, and if necessary, that's what they get up to. They also, like me and the majority of payrollers, don't need sleep and don't need caffeine, so they can kind of like get on with the job. An automated system is also capable of unifying data from across the globe into a single report, making all information and employee needs easy to find. A platform like ours, Papaya's, can help standardize payroll processes and outcomes. It helps deliver real-time visibility into payroll operations. No more of that post-payroll reporting. All that does is it's after the fact, and it eats into your next payroll cycle. It might feel like doom and gloom, and it might feel like there are job-stealing robots everywhere. I don't think that's the case. I think it's an opportunity to review what you do and improve on other areas. If you've got RPA within your payroll doing the tasks that take all of this time, you get to these valued adding activities like we've kind of like suggested. Imagine being able to get to business contingency planning and succession planning. For those of you that can remember, this also means no more dusting off the once in a year payroll laptop that comes out to kind of like, to do those activities. You get to spend more time with your teams as well.
And also from my point of view, I think it's a driver to increase the profession, isn't it? How the payroll industry is perceived within industries and within own businesses to have that data.
It absolutely does. Payroll, it's not glamorous. I'm not sure whether or not it really ever will be. I don't think anybody's ever going to make a film about it. I'm sure we've got an audience here for it, but these kind of things mean we can get to doing a lot of the other things that we do. I wrote an article a little while ago about the 11 essential skills for payrollers. We do so much more than payroll. There is project management, we herd cats, we make sure that everybody comes together. There is so much more that we do, and this kind of technology is going to mean that we actually get to do the things that are equally as important as paying people, but identify us as this function that is so significant to all businesses.
So we have one question. Why do you think payroll, the most integral part of a business, has failed to receive the benefits of technology advancements?
People don't invest in payroll until it's broke. And I think that is absolutely true. We don't talk about it. It's a task that just gets done. We kind of like go back to this big magic red button. But if we don't talk about it as payrollers, then nothing is going to change. I've had this conversation with somebody else today, and unfortunately, I think there are a large amount of us that accept and tolerate what we've got. The only people that we moan to are our significant others at the end of the day. We need to be having those conversations with the business, with the right stakeholders, and telling them that, they have got to invest. There is so much money going into ATS, ERP, HRIS, and everything else. It's about time we actually got our share of that pot. I think one of the other reasons that it's not necessarily taking place is because it is such a vital function. Nobody does want it to break. And if we feel, it's almost the reverse of fear of missing out. We don't want to do something because we do know this, and it's the fear of the unknown. What will happen if we change something? Will we pay everybody? And you also need to kind of think about and remember, we're going through these implementations. There isn't a huge amount of backfill. So those people that are going through payroll still have to do BAU as well. And how do we find the time in the day to do that?
AI is really big right now. No, sorry, AI is really big now. How can AI help payroll?
I think it still has a big way to go. I use ChatGPT and lots of other things every single day at this moment in time. They have their place. I think they are the basis and the start for a lot of things. I don't know whether or not I would want to use AI or ChatGPT to absolutely formulate my HR policies, but they are a very, very good starting point. I read an article not long ago to say that version 4 of ChatGPT had passed the American bar. There's lots of good things going on at this moment in time, but I do think within the next 18 to 24 months, we are going to see an even greater level of technology coming out. I think watch this space.
Yeah, I was actually just looking for something I printed out the other day. I asked ChatGPT how it was going to affect the payroll industry, and it said it wasn't going to, but the AI side of it would help to make it more automated. And also I asked about minimum wage in Spain, and it didn't give me the confidence with the answer, because it felt like it didn't want to actually give me the answer. It just said this is what it was in 2021, but blah blah blah, it could change. So I think the tool's there, isn't it? But it will not now. Okay.
Madeline has just made a really, really good point about including payroll managers in strategic decisions. I've said for a very, very long time, discovery is absolutely key to implementation or anything you do. If you do not have the right stakeholders in the right place at the right point in time, you're doomed to fail. If you don't get payroll managers and payroll supervisors, as well as payroll team members involved at the right points in time, it is going to go wrong. Unfortunately, a huge amount of those decisions do take place outside of our kind of, our remit, and that shouldn't be the case. We are the people at the end of the day that are going to be the end users. Senior stakeholders will walk away from a project and move on to the next something. We are the ones left holding everything together. So I'm absolutely with you. We should be involved in every stage of that process.
Do you think that payroll managers, leaders need to network within organisations to get themselves known, to get out of their comfort zone?
Absolutely. I think, it is difficult for some. You wouldn't believe it, but many, many years ago, this isn't the kind of thing that I would do. I would sit around in my own little corner and just kind of like get on with it. But we have got to be talking as payroll and payment professionals all of the time. How are we going to learn what good looks like if we don't see it somewhere else? I've had the fortune to work with lots of businesses over my time. I've taken ideas to them, I've taken ideas away from them, I've applied them somewhere else, and I've put recommendations in place, and we've worked on those. It's absolutely imperative that we all talk to one another. GPA is a fantastic forum for that. The mentorship program, you get to talk to people who are in this industry. Businesses run mentorship schemes were absolutely great, but they don't always necessarily, take place with people that know what we know. LinkedIn is great. There are so many forums, there are so many opportunities in there to read blogs, white papers, webinars, podcasts. There is so much information out there that it is there for everybody to read and digest. Get on with it, I say.
Yeah, definitely. Right, so we've got time for one last question. Still on the automation theme, will new workers in the age of automation be less competent since they rely on technology to do the thinking and understanding the legislation?
This is another conversation I've had. We've had this conversation. I've had it with a few other people. That is probably one of my biggest fears for the payroll industry. There are lots of people like me who have been in it for a number of years. I can sit down with a blank piece of paper and produce you a pay slip with manual tax and social security calculations. I'm not convinced in today's world that that is going to be the case. There is a lot of reliance on technology and systems. Technology is absolutely fantastic because it is going to make what we do easier, but we are always going to need somebody behind it knowing that the data flowing through is correct. If all you're looking at is one spreadsheet to a database, that's all you can see. You don't necessarily scan through it and see the issues. My fear is that unless we provide the right education to those people new to the payroll industry or coming into the industry, there is going to be a problem. What happens when the laptop battery dies or somebody pulls the plug out of the wall? We can't go back to paper.
Okay, sorry, I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who has engaged with the webinar. It's always really good fun to see people with their comments. I loved seeing how people started out in the payroll industry. I have to look at that properly because there's some really, really good ones. And yeah, and I think maybe some have taken over from you, Ian. Anyway, Ian, I just want to say thank you so much. I've really enjoyed today's webinar. We even had a comment from somebody who I know very well who said this was the best webinar ever. And if you're still watching this person who wrote that, I am very, very grateful. And I know if you've said that, you mean it. So thank you so much. Ian has worked very hard, very informative. So thank you so much. If you want to get in touch with Ian, as he said, he's on LinkedIn. Feel free to contact him via LinkedIn. If you need to contact me with any follow-up questions, let me know. But we'll get all of this information out to you. It'll also be on the GPA website. So thank you very much, Ian.
No, thank you very much. I really, really enjoyed it. And I would also say from my point of view, if there is anybody who is wanting information of any description, GPA is a fantastic place to find out that and get yourself involved in the mentorship program, whether or not it's as a mentee or a mentor, you'll find it invaluable.
Oh, thanks so much, Ian. Well, take care, everyone, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
Okay, thanks all. Goodbye.